Welcome back to Zoom Tennis, and today it's a really important issue which is all around how we look after ourselves through counselling. And it's a great pleasure to welcome David Leckie today, CEO of Mind Matters, who's going to help us with some really important issues around suicide and how we really get ourselves out of a bit of a mental dip. So David, welcome to Zoom Tennis.
Thank you so much for the invitation. It's nice to be on centre court with you.
Well, I think it might be the only time that you and I together, but not maybe the first or last time we're playing tennis together. Perhaps I look forward to doing that properly. So, David, you employ what, 650 counsellors? Is that right?
Yeah, we have 650 in our UK network, but we also work in the whole of Western Europe as well with some companies. So. Yeah, we do. They're not busy all the time, but that's our network size. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Well, we'll get straight into the questions. So, first question from me, really, it's an important one, really important. I did a video on World Mental Health Day, and it struck me about the stark statistics around suicide. In that across the world, one person every 40 seconds is deciding that they need to check out of life and they've had enough. Yeah. How is that impacting currently on COVID for people?
Well, sadly, it's getting worse. We're finding a real uptake in referrals on the back of suicide. One of the major clients we work with is a railway company, and you'll be aware that some people choose to end their lives on train tracks, for example. And also we do quite a work with some NHS people, and there's an even increase, for example, in inpatient suicide rates. Which is maybe not so well known, but it's very concerning. I suppose my major concern about what's happening in COVID, and something that we are doing all the time with our clients, is encouraging folks to be able to give space and speak of whatever they're going through. I think one of the saddest issues with regard to the whole topic of suicide is so many times we hear from those who are left behind that they had no idea of how bad it was for the person who's chosen to take their own life. And that strikes me as being the almost saddest thing, that this individual was going through the worst of times, but for whatever reason felt that they couldn't turn to somebody and to share that thing. So I think in our role, we're very much about encouraging folks to say, name it, speak of the anger, speak of the frustration, speak of the sadness. But and vent it, because I don't know about you, but I certainly allow myself to do that every now and again. I think I allow myself to do that with you. In fact, I have allowed myself to do that with you, and you're very good at listening to me sometimes. But actually, because if we can name it, if we can share it, then somehow it can. Well, at least we're being heard, and I know the power of being heard, and that's what we're trying to do, to encourage folks to speak the name of whatever they're going through, because you're not alone. And if I'm delighted to know that my colleagues, we have saved lives just by using these two things attached to the side of our head. Sounds crazy, but it's true.
And is there any positives at the moment coming out of this from your perspective as a counselling organisation?
Out of the COVID thing?
Yeah.
I think there are positives. I mean, I think we can focus on. I mean, on a personal level, a positive. I am, on the one hand, very frustrated. I have one of my grandsons lives in Los Angeles. He's only 3. I haven't seen him for over a year, and I don't know when I'm going to see him again. I mean, I will see him again, touch wood, vaccines, etc. But last night, I was in his teepee in the living room in his Los Angeles apartment with his dad. Now, obviously, I wasn't physically there, but I was there courtesy of the FaceTime. The dad was there with him physically, the little chap was there with him, and granddad was in there too. I could never have got in the teepee. I couldn't get down on the floor and squeeze myself in. There wasn't enough room, but there was enough room on FaceTime. Now, I mean, that's a true story from last night, and I loved it. Of course, I would have rather been there, and I tell him all the time, there's lots of tickles in granddad's fingers, you just wait. But there are positives. I think also the big positive about slowing down. That and enjoying the simplicity of life. I'm reminded of a guy called Terry Waite. You're actually younger than me, but you must know Terry.
Absolutely, yes. Yeah, I remember the day that he was freed. Yeah,
very powerful. And he was kidnapped in '87 in Lebanon, almost 5 years locked up. But I was lucky enough to see him a couple of years ago in York. He came to talk about a book he'd written. But I'm reminded, I read something that he'd said quite recently. He said, you're not, rather than focusing on the frustrations, he said, you're at home being kept safe from a virus. And he was encouraging folks to just put a pattern into their structure. Don't live all day in your pajamas, for example, I remember him saying. But I think we have a lot to learn. If somebody like him, who could cope with almost 5 years of being locked up, who realized that the most damaging thing potentially was allowing his mind to get away with himself, as it were. And I think that somebody like him can encourage us to see things in a different light. And I think, how dare I moan about the fact that I've been locked away for a couple of weeks? I'm not locked away, but my movements are a little bit limited. In the great scheme of things, it ain't that bad. No. Now, I think that personally, I've learned to enjoy the basics again, but I think that's what life is all about. I often think that all we have in this moment, I mean, right now, Chris, you and I are living together. Thankfully, from your point of view, we're not going to live together for much longer. Yeah. But this is our life right now, yes. And I think we have to make the most of it. Yeah. And who knows what the rest of the day is going to bring. It's getting off to a good start, but who knows? But
yeah, and that sort of incarceration aspect of it reminds me also of Mandela, on the basis that I think his savior was the Invictus poem, and that he repeated that time and time again. And anybody who hasn't read it, I'm not going to call it out now, but read that, and the last two words or two lines, I think, of that poem are very, very powerful. Great. Okay, good. Well, that's the first salve of shots over the net. So back to me then, David. What do you want to ask?
Okay. Well, I'm interested in what routines that you have, or what do you use to keep yourself sort of feeling maybe less anxious, maybe? What do you do?
Well, it's not about being in the pajamas. If I stood up, I haven't got my pajamas on, but I have I call it my prime framework. So I have a morning and an evening ritual. And prime in the morning stands for prioritization, and then reflection, inspiration, meditation, and energy. I don't mind which order you do it, but prioritization means that the big rocks get done. Those are the three things that are most important to you. Reflection is actually writing up in a journal of what's happening today and who am I meeting. And obviously I said I was looking forward to seeing you today. It was part of my journal today. Inspiration comes from reading or film or video, something that will inspire the mind to start thinking differently. Meditation or mindfulness, just to check out for a few minutes in the morning and think about just mindfulness. And then energy, some kind of little workout routine or running on the spot, something that just gets the body moving. So that's my morning prime. And then generally speaking, in the evening, I kind of have another ritual around prime, but the letters now stand for something different. So that stands for people. Who did I meet today and who did I have impact with? Again, reflection, but this time, what am I grateful for from the day? Interrogate, did I do my three things? That was the priority this morning. Motivation, what was my mood today? Did it bring me joy? Did it bring me good, bad? And then finally, the E stands for eyes shut. So that's kind of my prime morning and afternoon sort of evening framework. And I believe that helps me structure my day in a way that really gets it starting in a mindful, thoughtful way. And then when I check out the day, I think, do you know what? I'm actually happy with what I did today. Or if I wasn't, then at least I'm beginning to think about what I could have learned to try to be better tomorrow.
Yeah, I was going to ask that as a follow-up shot, is that you always come across to me as energetic and positive and all those sorts of things. But I wanted to know how you cope with allowing yourself those times when maybe it's not been such a good day. And I was interested in what you just said towards the end there about maybe if it's not been so good. Do you allow yourself to feel that, to experience that, and what do you do with it?
Absolutely. It's important to feel as though you're not perfect. I would never like to imagine that I'm arrogant enough to think that I'm not worth improving or that I can't fulfill my own potential. And by checking out and reflecting backwards on that little time when I was a little bit antagonistic or a little bit snappy with a person that I met or with my partner, was that right? Was it right to bring my bad self to somebody else's world? Absolutely not. But sometimes you just go through the motions. And my own thought process is attitudes are infectious. Is mine worth catching?
That's
And at
good.
the moment, this sort of ripple of kindness, I think, is so important. I know it was World Kindness Day last Friday, but kindness should be something that happens every day. That wonderful chemical of oxytocin that comes out of us when kindness spreads. If I can bring a little bit of kindness by sharing something nice or saying something nice or just saying to somebody, well done, I really enjoyed our meeting today. Well, why not? But absolutely, I never suggest that I'm perfect. And the day that I think I'm perfect, please come around, smack me in the face as hard as you can, because I'd like to know about it.
There will be an orderly queue. If no, what about your job? Because your job's is your job sales? Do you regard that as sort of stressful, challenging? What about? And I always think, what happens when I'd hate it. I think negative self-esteem if I don't get the result. How do you cope with that? What do you think about it?
It can be, yes, and it's something I kind of talk about as a bit of a 4-week program of mindset around that. When you're in a negative frame of mind from a outgoing sales position, or when you're trying to coerce people into doing something, if you believe that failure is the destiny, then that's not a good start. You have to really believe that even though the person is perhaps giving you rejection, I have a spirit to serve as opposed to spirit to sell. I've got something good that I think I need to translate to you as the audience, and therefore I'm going to believe that I've got something good to talk about. But the salesperson that looks at the phone and just thinks, I really have fear of actually picking the phone up and making the call, it's a very lonely place to be. And then, of course, as soon as you then get some combat from the other person down the phone to say, who are you? What do you want? How dare you interrupt me? Of course, that doesn't help with your self-esteem. And then it becomes an ever-decreasing circle. Right. So certainly within the sales framework, it's very, very important to have a very positive mindset around success, but also know that the more no's you have, the closer you are to your yes. Yeah. Because within the skill set you've got, you know that you've managed to get appointments or leads or generate success for people. So as long as you know that from within yourself that you have got the ability to translate your skill to a successful outcome, then that's what we need to focus on. I would say that if you are in that position where you're feeling fearful, feeling rejected, people are ghosting you, it's probably something you're doing wrong with your own tonation or your approach, or you're becoming too desperate, or you're sounding too begging, and that's coming across as insincere on your approach. So take a check back if you can recall what you're doing, or ask somebody else to dial in with you and accompany it for you. And there's some really cool software out there as to how to try to listen to what you're doing, and then how it can be reframed to be more beneficial for the recipient.
Thank you. Yeah, it helps a lot. Excellent.
Good. All right. Well, I think you kind of did a double hit there and hit me with 2 questions. But hey, that's David Leckie. You know, it doesn't conform to the norm.
Now, it was the ball was just bouncing off the net. I was, come on.
Well, yeah, the umpire's just given you a point violation there, I think. Now, all right. Now, seriously, from a counselling perspective, you obviously do this a lot, and I'm worried about stigmatism associated with the word counsellor. Yeah. And sometimes I think it's the same when you say, I'm going to give you a coach. People, particularly in the UK, I think still associate counsellors and coaches with something that is negative. Do you perceive that to be true? And if it is, how can we try to get people to have more faith in the prospect of going to see a counsellor?
I think the good news is, because as you can tell, I'm a very old person. I'm in my 60s now, but I've been doing this 30 years. And the good news is that more and more people are coming to see a counsellor and accept it as being kind of much more normal. When I first started, seeing a male client was like, wow, this is just, I'm slightly exaggerating, but these days it's much more balanced, which is great. But you're quite right. The thing that concerns me still, I think, is that people see, I'm going to see my counsellor as, am I crazy enough to see a counsellor? Is my problem big enough? I'm not that bad. I don't need to see one. And I think, well, okay, but I think that there's real value. If you think about what does a counsellor provide you, the counsellor doesn't provide you with the answers. What the counsellor provides is a space, a secure environment for a confidential discussion where you know that whatever you're going to say is being kept and held and protected. securely. And I think very often with some of my clients, they choose, and maybe they've arrived or they've come to our organisation or to me because they've got a problem, but they've seen that there's the value in that sort of process of having the space to explore confidentially. And I have quite a large number of clients who maybe don't see me as regularly as they did once upon a time, but they check in once a month, once every 6 weeks or so, sometimes quite often, to talk about what's going right. And there's real value in that, to sort of remind ourselves. And of course, if there's things maybe not going so right, of course we talk about that. But it's not, I think, to see a counsellor is not just for when you are in a very, very, very bad place. I mean,
okay. Well, I wish that more people did it, particularly when I remember those statistics when I did that video. Final question, and it's a little bit naughty because I'm putting this as an extra point to you. Christmas is coming up, New Year, and I know all the solicitors love it because their workbook suddenly increases after Christmas and New Year because of all this relationship strife, particularly this year when we've all been living in each other's pockets so much. What do you feel goes wrong during those festivities that creates this crescendo of downfall in relationships?
Thank you. I'm more than happy with that question because I know the answer to it. It's about expectations.
Okay.
About my own, I think, overly high expectations. I find it sad in all the Christmases we've had. I find it fascinating how many people get so stewed up about, are there enough roast potatoes for Auntie Beryl? It's just, I've learned a lot for the last, you know me, Chris, to know that I live in 2 countries and I have a Dutch family. And in the Netherlands, Christmas is so relatively low key. They celebrate Sinterklaas in the beginning of December, but Christmas itself is much more family. They don't have all these massive big presents and all that sort of stuff. I think, well, I've learned so much from that. And that often when we find ourselves having problems, we can't change the external, but what we can change is our own expectations of it. This year in particular, I mean, who knows what Christmas is going to be like this year in particular? It used to be a time when we used to have to get together with our family and come, into our small room and stay together with the family for a few days. We've been doing that virtually all year. I haven't the faintest idea what Christmas is going to look like. And again, but I hope that people can challenge the expectation. Say, is there anything I can do to change my view of it? And if you can, maybe it'd be a better experience. Is that a good enough answer? No,
I love that. And I know it's kind of what's on your Christmas list. What are we going to do? Where are we spending it? Who's coming? And all these questions. And it's like, it's 8 hours that we're awake from the, maybe a bit longer if you've got young children. But so much has to go into that delivery of that day. And of course, when you have that expectation, it has to be perfect. It's only destined for failure if that's the expectation you put on it. I love that. So be less expecting about the outcomes and just go with the flow. Is that kind of a summary?
Absolutely. You summarised very well. You're a good listener. Perhaps you could be a counsellor.
David, is there anything else you wanted to bring up before we put up our contact details for people to talk about us?
No, I don't. I want to thank you for this opportunity. It's been great fun. And as long as you reluctantly agree, I've won the match.
Well, of course. It's yes, David. Of course, you've won the match. And
one person started with a handicap. You see.
Yeah. Okay. Let me just put our contact details up so people can contact you if they wish.
Please do.
And then if anybody's watching these, there are plenty more of these that we've done. One last week on digital transformation, a great one with Nick Brownlee about sales, and previous to that, Marianne from Do Marketing about customer experience. These are your details, David. Is this correct in terms of mobile and email address and everything?
Absolutely. And if you'd like to anybody, please feel free to give us a call. No hassle, no pressure. Just pick the phone up. Yeah,
I've checked in with David on a few personal issues that he's done purely out of the nature of his good own heart. And I assure you, he's a really, really good listener. And being slightly more senior than me, only slightly, he has many years of wisdom that he can bring down the pipe for you that helps you check out those expectations, become slightly more grounded and have a mindful day.